Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
I read hadiths in Sahih Bukhari where it says about snaps, like the most heavily punished people will be photograph makers. So in this, where currently where we stay, it's not possible to avoid photographs completely because you require photographs for everything. How do we act on these hadiths as well as be Sharia compliant?
That's the question that there's hadith in Sahih Bukhari that the people who will be punished maximum are the photograph makers. And today in this world we cannot avoid photography. Therefore, how do we reconcile the hadith? Whether there's nothing that you cannot avoid photography, but the interpretation, the translation of hadith is wrong. What the hadith says, the person who makes a tasveer, the musawwir, the person who makes a tasveer, he will be punished. Now what is the meaning of a tasveer is to be understood. At the time of the Prophet, photography wasn't there. So there's a difference of opinion between the scholars whether the prohibition is on photography or other thing. There's one group of scholars, for example, who say that photography and videography both are haram. For example, Sheikh Nasruddin Albani, he was a great scholar of the last century of hadith and a muhaddis. He says that still photography and videography both are haram, according to his understanding. The fatwa of Sheikh bin Baz, he says that still photography is haram and videography is permitted. Sheikh Utaymi, his fatwa is that as long as it doesn't go outside the fold of Islam, within the purview of the Islamic Sharia, still photography and videography both are allowed. Now all these three great scholars, they're great scholars, and they're the authentic scholars, alhamdulillah, and respect all. But Allah says in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, in Surah Nahl, chapter 16, verse 43, that ask the person who knows. So these are great scholars of hadith, but photography is a science. And what they say, that since the Prophet said, tasveer is there, and today in Arabic, for photography also the word tasveer is used. But at the time of the Prophet, photography wasn't there. So what scholars say, because tasveer is mentioned, and today the word tasveer is used, photography, therefore photography is haram. See, the language keeps on developing. So we have to first try and identify what was prohibited in Islam. That's more important rather than the word, what it meant that time. So since that time photography wasn't there, you cannot say for sure that the word tasveer means photograph. Though today, in Arabic, the word tasveer is for photograph. So many of the words, for example, utilized at one particular time, it keeps on changing by the passage of time. Those scholars who say that photography is permitted, what they say, that what the Prophet prohibited is the hand painting. I'm not talking about those scholars who have gone way away from Quran Hadith. They say that sculpture is allowed and everything. I'm talking about the authentic scholars. There's a difference of opinion among the authentic scholars. What they say, that what the Prophet prohibited, what is done by hand. And the Hadith says that a person who makes a tasweer, makes a painting, Allah will ask him on the day of judgment that put life into it. But naturally they can't. So making a picture, a painting of these living creatures like animals and human beings is prohibited. What happens in photography is nothing but a reflection which is preserved on paper. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never prevented the Sahabas to look in a reflection in the water while combing their hair. He never prohibited them to look in a mirror. So looking in a mirror where reflection is there is not prohibited. In photography, the reflection is preserved. So scholars say that photography per se is not haram. But if you use photography for wrong things, like idol worship is haram. Using photography for obscenity, for pornography is haram. Using photography making a big blow up of person, like Amitabh Bachchan, Gavaskar putting in a drawing room, that leads to idol worship is haram. So photography per se is not haram, but using photograph for wrong purpose is haram. So there are scholars like Sheikh bin Baz who say that still photography is haram and videography is prohibited. Now since we are in the field of media, I am aware that videography, the shooting, is nothing but still photography moving at a speed of 25 frames per second or 24 frames per second. So when you move a still photograph at the speed of 24, 25 frames per second, it becomes motion. So still photography and videography is a higher version, advanced version of still photography. So therefore what I say, that these were great scholars, but because of the knowledge of science, they may not have referred to a person who is a scientist. I believe more with the fatwa of Sheikh Utaymi, who says that still photography and videography per se is not haram. And he says that on certain occasions which is permitted in Islam it's allowed, otherwise normally making blow-ups is haram, or keeping big blow-up size photograph of great personalities that leads to idol worship is haram. So I agree more with scholars like Sheikh Utaimi. So therefore photography per se is not haram, but using photography for haram purposes is haram. Hope that answers the question, brother.
نعم. يقول فضيلة الشيخ أشهد الله أني أحبك في الله. سؤال يا فضيلة الشيخ: ما رأي فضيلتكم في التصوير الفوتوغرافي أو بالفيديو إذا كان للتوثيق؟ فإنه يطلب منا
إذا كان إيش؟
للتوثيق، فإنه يطلب من قبل إدارة التعليم أو من قبل وزارة المعارف. أفدنا مأجورا.
للتصوير الوثائقي لا أرى فيه بأسا، سواء كان في الفيديو أو في الكاميرا، لأن هذا حاجة. والتصوير بالفيديو ليس تصويرا في الواقع، لأن الشريط اللي عليه الصور لا تتبين فيه الصورة إطلاقا، إنما هي نبرات معينة إذا مرت على الآلة المعروفة ظهرت الصورة. وأما التصوير الفوتوغرافي الفوري الذي ليس فيه التحمير ولا تعديل، فهذا في الحقيقة ليس بتصوير. واضح؟ ليش ليس بتصوير؟ لأن هذا الذي سلط الكاميرا على ما أمامها لم يصنع أي شيء، غاية ما هنالك حرك الزر لأجل تشتغل، لكن هل خطط الوجه؟ الجواب لا. العين لا، ما عمل أي شيء. صورة من خلق الله عز وجل قابلها بهذه الآلة فصورتها. الآن لو كتبت أنا بيدي كتابا ثم أدخلت على التصوير وخرج، هل يقال إن هذا الكتاب كتاب المصور ولا كتابي أنا؟ أجب يا رجل ولا ما فهم السؤال؟ أنا كتبت كتابا: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، ثم صورت بآلة التصوير، خرجت الصورة، هل تكون هذه الحروف التي أمامي هل تكون من كتابة المصور ولا من كتابتي أنا؟ من كتابتي أنا. هذا نفس الشيء. ولذلك نجد أن الكاميرا يمكن أن يصور بها الإنسان الأعمى، يوجهها إلى الجهة التي يريد أن يصورها ويصور وهو أعمى ما يدري ولا خطط ولا زي شيء. لكن يبقى لماذا صورها؟ هل هو لقصد محرم فهي حرام، أو لقصد مباح فهي مباحة، أو لأمر يحتاجه فهي مباحة أيضا. نعم.